When the destruction came to the noble dwarves, it was unexpected by all. The dwarves milling within their defended city, selling all kinds of berries picked from the extensive berry farms. The shadow of death that fell from the sky left not a single sign of the city in history, with the exception of its sole survivor, Thorum Shieldbreaker. Being only 40 years of age, his adolescent beard, barely growing past his shoulders, faded white within a day upon exploring the utter destruction of his people. He knew his noble berry farming people were feuding with a division of the berry pickers, but no one would ever believe they would wrought this destruction upon their brothers. His mind falls apart at the trauma, never seeing his father supervise the berry pickers. The prickle of his mother's beard as he was kissed good morning, the buzz of the sweet-smelling dwarven city, the sounds of dwarven ballads filling the tavern airs, or even the smell of a hard-working dwarf. At the end of the berry-picking day, Thorum Shieldbreaker, now a broken dwarf, cried out for an answer from anyone or anything to help him conceive what has occurred. His answer was only responded by a deep voice of a demon god, Hashut, who regarded him with great appeal. The voice of Hashut spoke of promises of power to be wrought against those who were responsible for the death of his people, Thorum accepting any avail. The demon god Hashut aided Thorum in bringing vengeance upon the berry-picking dwarves separated from the great tribe, driving them out of their cities and homes, calling upon every demonic being at the demon god's disposal. Within a day of the driving the dwarves out of the home mountain chain, Thorum Shieldbreaker's body began to petrify, and at the end of the month he was no more than a statue. He is forever known as Father of Evil. His offspring followed his path and seek to continue to extract their revenge upon those who murdered their people. The first two born of every family become a priest to serve the great Hashut, who leads ceremonies, prayers, torture, and self-torture. All priests are on equal footing and lead the dwarves of the Priestdom. In their village of Priestdom, a young priest tending the goats sees a recently birthed kid. He brings his hammer down upon its head, knocking it unconscious. Binding it, he burnt the kid alive and asked for Hashut to guide his hand at benefiting this herd of goats. The priest cut off his left hand and tossed it onto the fire. He screamed until the fire died out, and the majority of blood left the stump on his arm. Another priest, with grayest of beards, dug through the dung of some of the goat. Finding seeds rooting within the dung, he gathered his children and had them chant a hymn to Hashut as he planted the seeds in the earth. He dug a small hole, buried a handful of seeds, and then cut his own wrists to water the seeds with blood. When the children finished their hymn, their father, pale and white, lies on the ground, blood seeping into the ground where the seed was planted. His children continue to come to this spot to sing the hymn and witness his results. The development of agriculture was never supposed to be such a bloody business, but there seemed to be something about the dwarves of Priestdom that turned blood to power. Their efforts and sacrifices both translated into pure, indisputable results. Thangram Bloodstump, as he came to be called, attributed his enormous success and growth of his herds to the favor of Hashut. The regular sacrifice of baby goats and his only bodily sacrifices had turned what had once been a middling flock into a teeming mass of goat. Eventually, Thangram needed aid, for the herd was too large for him to manage alone. These shepherds were in some cases his children, but increasingly were also members of the holy congregation that looked at overseeing the goats as a form of religious duty even. The fields, sown with seeds, watered with blood, and fed by Hashut's burning gaze, grew plentifully and regularly. The slopes of the plateau were not ideal for agriculture, though. Despite that, the limited land available provided a small collection of farmers with the fertile land to make wealth grow from the soil and aid the development and growth of Priestdom with their produce. The relationship between shepherd and farmer grew symbiotic, as the farmers would often collect seeds from the dung of goat herders returning from their drives, in exchange for a cut of the produce which also oftentimes went back to the goats for consumption. The circle of life. The priestdom grew upon the back of sacrificed goats and small personal sacrifices. All dwarves were given a 1-inch deep cut down their left shoulder in honor of Hashut and the increase in power he has bestowed upon the goat herds and herders. The miners of the copper metals, feeling the new wound of Hash out on their shoulders, somatically felt the power of their evil demon god within them. This power needed to be saved up and used at the right moment. A vault must be established. They dug deeper and deeper at each crack of their respective foremen's whips, breaking their hardy skin, till an underground chamber was carved stained with the miners' blood. Before setting up the copper paneling along the walls that would seal the chamber, a few extra smaller holes were dug in the floor. While the paneling was being erected, several priests gathered the foremen's wives and put each one in the smaller holes in the floor, and witnessed copper paneling being set above them. Screams of the wives of the foremen were heard for the following 2 weeks as construction continued. 20 other priests, searching for new ways to obtain the power offered by Hashut, walked a mile outside of the village and a mile from the river. They held a ceremony in the name of Hashut and asked for the demon god to guide them as they explored the territory of their priestdom. To show their zealousy, each priest set himself ablaze, shouting the name of their evil lord, and ran to the river in excruciating pain. Only those who made it to the river and survived the burns set out to explore the land. Khazad-dum ran red with the blood of the sacrificed. The sacrifices were necessary, of course. The bones of the workers and their families were the foundation on which the new vault stood. The fortified area would be perfect for storing a small amount of goods for the priesthood's use at a later date. The tortured and bent bodies of the sacrificed would also serve as much as a warning as it did as a blessing. All who trespassed there knew the inevitable cost of Hashut's raid. The vault itself was a primitive thing, little more than a cleared-out space within the mountains, and blocked by a powerful pair of heavy doors. It would be enough to serve, although more sophisticated methods of storage and of accounting would need to be made to progress it beyond this. Perhaps the bigger development was the discovery of a source of iron within the cave structure. Some of the foremen excavating the mountainside in order to make way for the vault discovered a massive chunk of gray metal within the walls. They did as all Khazad-dum dwarves knew to do. They smashed a pair of newborns on the newly discovered mound of metal, then began to chip away at it. They found it surprisingly strong for how easy it was to work. With only a little more development and an independent structure to pull it out, the metal could completely replace the old copper tools. Glory be to Hashut. The village in the mountainside, known as Karak-Dum, has grown immensely, and with that growth, new homes, work areas, and places of worship must be developed to praise Hashut, as one knows one should. All dwarves of the priestdom obtain a branding with the only known symbol, the mark of Hashut. This mark is burnt into the skin of their left biceps at the start of each day, so that with each lift of the hammer to smash rocks to expand the village, they can feel the pain and see the unholy symbol. During the expansion of the village, a large number of priests gather in the one part of the village that goes unused. For a long time now, it was thought a great altar on top of a ziggurat would greatly please their demon god. Atop of it, the most complicated and painful sacrifices could take place high above the rest of the settlement so that all could view the vital sacrament of the nation. During the stacking of large rectangular stones, priests continuously let the blood of male goats run down the construction, bathing every open pore of the stone in blood of a horned beast. 7:26 in the fields. Thangrim Bloodstump continued his work with the goat. The old cut of yesteryear on his shoulder, still giving him unholy pain on the wet days, and the new brand on his left biceps causing him to leaving his shepherd's stick at home due to not being able to carry it properly in his only hand. Despite this, he continued to grow the herd, until one day his own brother asked him for help. His brother's goats would not stay in their designated area, causing their breeding to slow. Thangrim Bloodstomp knowingly told his brother that the solution was obvious, and before saying any more walked into the center of the herd and picking up a baby goat. Thangrim sacrificed this kid, slitting its neck and burning it to a crisp. When all that bones remained, Thangrim cut off his brother's right hand and threw it into the fire and watched it burn. Praise to Hash, Ut rose high into the sky with the pyres of the sacrificed, screams of pain and ecstasy both. It was a good day to cap out a glorious week to end the perfect year. So many had been sacrificed to make the deeds of the day happen, but happen they did. The ceremony honored the opening of a new temple and the ascension of a new high priest to lead the dwarves of Khazad-dûm. From atop the high ziggurat in the center of Khazad-dûm, Thangrim Bloodstomp stood with hands raised high to the people gathered below. He was freshly anointed in the blood of kids and children alike, and wore atop his head the skull of a twin-headed goat. He called down to the people, directing them, blessing them. As he spoke, blood rained hot and sticky from the sky. An auspicious sign. Praise be to Hash, Ut. The dwarves cried and cut themselves in supplication. The priesthood was stronger now than ever. In a religious fervor, some of the work toward rebuilding the village to a more glorious purpose had been finished. In the fields, the goat herders had worked tirelessly. They had learned new lessons, adapted to new sacrifices, and their herds were more efficient than ever before. One thing that the herders noticed was that some goats, fed by their sacrificed kin, were growing larger. Large enough that with some work these ram may even make suitable mounts.